Good morning, everyone. It's February 11th at 8 o'clock a.m. and I'll call the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors to order. At this time, we'll stand and have a moment of silence. Thank you. Will you join me in Pledge Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have roll call now. Are you going to introduce Scott? Oh, Ken. And we have 3 missing. One just called in sick, so they're all been okayed. So this time we're open for public comment for anything on or off the agenda. Any public comment for anything on or off the agenda? Third time. Public comment for anything on or off the agenda. Not seeing anything, we'll move forward. Thank you. This time I'm going to just take a second and introduce our new member, Scotty Yard here. It's been 2 years almost waiting to get somebody from District 13, so welcome. Consent agenda. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Deva, Supervisor Osnes, do I have a second? I'll second. Supervisor Schoberg. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Well, is the second up there yet? We have a motion, second, not seeing any discussion. We will vote at that. And that's all yeses. Thank you. Do you have any presentation recognitions? Nothing there, so we'll go to our annual department reports with our district attorney first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I submitted the report. The one thing that I think you'll find interesting, we had, if you look at our criminal traffic, which are driving after revocations, drunk driving second and thirds, our misdemeanors, which are cases that can end up in our county jail, and our felonies, which are persons who can go to prison. We had roughly 2,000 of those cases between the 3 categories. Felonies and misdemeanors are about 800 apiece, a little over 800 on the misdemeanors, right at 800 on the felonies. But we had 1,400 different individuals, which is a reflection that we have a certain number of individuals who are piling up other charges, whether they're in custody or out of custody. We had a large number of persons served by our victim witness office, over 3,200 people. It's been a fairly busy year. Significant changes in the office are a couple. We had an additional prosecutor added by the state. I think some of you were here when the governor announced that back in October. We had some troubles filling that position because 60 positions out of approximately 330 previously assistant DAs were added statewide. there are a number of assistants who moved from position to position. And we lost 2 of our assistants. We hired, so we eventually have 3 new individuals in. That's a little bit different. We've reorganized ourselves in the courts and changed some of the assignments internally in the office. That's more of a manage. We also started a veterans diversion program. There's 2 advantages to the county for this. One, these men and women who are suffering primarily due to their service to the nation deserve our help. And they can get it through the VA rather than county resources. So we're able to direct them into the VA, saving the county's resources to be used by other individuals. And 2, it helps them stay out of a criminal record. We've started that in the fall. It's moving slowly. We have a little, I believe we have about 8 men and women who are doing that right now. We're having some trouble identifying those individuals, primarily because we don't have a process, though the jail has put up some signage. We're encouraging defense attorneys to let us know. We'd like to do this as a pre-charging, but we haven't been able always to do that. The advantage for pre-charging, of course, is they don't hit the public record system, CCAP. I think most of you are familiar with that. That tracks court cases. It keeps them out of the public record, so there's some advantages to that. Generally, I believe we came in under budget. I think we reduced some of our costs last year because the county has been financing an assistant district attorney. That position went from a full-time equivalent to a limited term, and we eliminated a good portion of that, but that position still exists. So not a whole lot of changes. A fairly good cycle. We got some good people. Buck? Or should I call you supervisor here?
Yeah, just call me Buck.
Okay, Buck.
Anything but late for supper.
Okay.
May I?
Go ahead.
Were you finished or did I interrupt you? I didn't.
No,
mean
I'm
to.
done.
Oh, yeah. With respect to identifying veterans as early as possible, is there a reason, and I can ask this of the sheriff when he comes for his report, but why not ask the question as they're being booked or as
We
they're
do.
entering the jail, are you a veteran?
We do. And there is, the sheriff's department, and I won't speak for them, their record system is going to be changing over this year. We had a couple of years ago when about a year ago when Chris Strauss became the captain, we spoke to him in that, and they were able to do their intake procedure to take an unused box to market. But the problem comes in, it's a self-report situation. You can't put a name and a date of birth into a criminal justice system and come up that they've had military service. That's a Department of Defense site that we don't have access to. So it's self-report. So it's the same problem you would have with someone who's dealing with, say, mental health issues or drug addiction issues. You're depending on them for the initial information. And quite frankly, it's been my experience that the men and women who are coming through the military, when they're into the criminal justice system, there's an element of shame and embarrassment. This is not the duty, honor, and service that they were trained to do. So the self-report is difficult. So, but the sheriff has done steps like put up signage where they meet with the public defender. We're encouraging the public defender because we can get those resources. So we're taking the steps we can. This is part of the booking process. Everyone's been cooperative on it. We've been working on trying to do it, but the self-report part is where we're getting hung up.
Any other questions for Mike?
And of course, if you do have questions, individual cases might be a little tougher to answer, but how the office works, what we're doing, how we process things, feel free to contact me, come up anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Our county treasurer is next.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me and taking the time to read my report. I won't go over that, but I did want to just make a couple of points that were not in the report. I get asked sometimes about our online payments for property taxes, and I have a little bit of data to share. In 2018, we had $2.4 million in property tax payments made online. And in 2019, it went to $3.4 million, so an increase of just over $1 million there. January of 2020, just what we just wrapped up, we had 1.4 million, which is about double what we had in January of 18. So we're definitely seeing an increase there, although it's still a relatively small percentage of the total tax payments. A couple years ago, we did start sending copies of bills to new owners whose name were not on the tax record at the time of printing the bill. We'll get those lists, each year we get those rent delinquencies there, so. With that, does anybody have any question for me?
Supervisor Malik.
It seems to me that there's a charge imposed on the payer for the online system. And I think that might be a deterrent, although it's not huge, but it's there. There's a savings to us, at least in labor, in your office. Not a marginal savings. You couldn't have one less employee exactly, but there's a savings to us. So have you done an analysis, or asked Mr. Witt to do an analysis, of what the effect might be if we the county, absorbed the charge for an online payment?
I have not done an analysis like that. We use our provider is Point and Pay, and they're used pretty commonly throughout the state. And that 2.39% fee is negotiated statewide, and it is paid by the taxpayer. But you do have an option of using an e-check where you just enter your banking information, and that's a straight $1.50 charge. So a lot of people, most of our online payments are used with an e-check.
With an e-check.
So $1.50 versus 50 cents for a stamp isn't a big deterrent, and I think more people are catching on to that option.
You're probably right.
Any other questions for Denise? Not seeing any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
On to our county clerk's report.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Campbell, the county clerk, and my report is in your packet. I'm just going to highlight one thing. In June, I hosted the Wisconsin County Clerk Conference here in Hudson. We had approximately 55 county clerks attend, 13 vendors, staff from the Wisconsin Elections Commission. We had, they came in Sunday, they left Wednesday. We had a busy schedule throughout that time there. I wanted to mention we had some special guest speakers attend. Our Chair Larson welcomed the group on Monday morning. Mary Claire Olson Potter from the Hudson Chamber was there also on Monday. Dean Knutson showed up on Tuesday, and he's the chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and he was grateful that he didn't have to travel a far distance like we are used to traveling to meetings, and just to be able to stay in Hudson. So he did a nice welcome for the group. And then our other special guest was Scott Cox. He did a presentation on tax deed to a breakout session, so I appreciate his time in that. So other than that, my report is in your packet. If you have any questions for me, go ahead.
Supervisor Akhtarov.
I just have one, because I've worked elections, and I've also become aware that there's a lot of communities where even if the people are taking the training, they don't understand it, it's not thoroughly done. How can you make sure that it's consistent throughout the county, and that everybody's done it, and that everybody's on the same page?
Are you talking training for election officials?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, they go through the training, but you go to the different areas to vote, and some people are still being told that you have to use this machine.
No.
But it's being done. It was done last election, and I know for a fact. And so is there any way that you can think of that it can be handled more effectively?
Municipal clerks are responsible for training. In 2015, we upgraded our election equipment, so we were consistent throughout the county. We weren't consistent before because we had municipalities still hand counting ballots. And so this helped a lot, I think, in that. Polling place setup, I don't get involved in. It's the municipal clerk's responsibility. And I always encourage them to have their election officials come in for public testing of the election equipment, and do the training at that time. Some are doing it. I'm not sure if it's consistent.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Cindy. We'll move on to our administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The financial reports are in the packet. They represent preliminary year-end financial activity for the 5 standing committees and those departments within those governing committees. The preliminary year-end numbers look good. If you look at total revenues, we had budgeted 96.7 million in revenues. It shows that we collected 94.7. So if you look at that, you would say, well, we're short in revenues. But if you look at the under the administrative revenues, we had budgeted 7.9 million for debt service under revenues. It's actually budgeted as a revenue. We only levied 4.6 million for debt service, and then if you recall at budget adoption time, there was an amendment made by Supervisor Nordstrand to apply fund balance, a certain portion of fund balance towards debt service, and so there's a discrepancy or a difference of approximately 3.2 million. So that makes up the largest portion of the difference between budgeted total revenues and actual revenues. And then also under Health and Human Services, if you look at the cost centers for the health center campus, it shows up as approximately $1 million short in revenues. That is offset also with the identical amounts or near identical amounts in expenditures. So they're offsetting. And this was due to the fact that we had not received the Medicaid waiver. We actually received it towards the end of this year, but we had budgeted anticipating having that waiver in 2019. So we show a shortage of actual to budget revenues, but they're offset with expenditure reductions as well, because we staff to the available census at the health center. And then if we look at expenditures, we came in under expenditures. We had budgeted 96.7 total expenditures for the fiscal year 19. We actually came in at 1.4 million under in terms of expenditures, and it's actually even more than that, because if you look at under, again, the administrative expenses, there was 3.2 million in what under the cost center of unallocated, and this was due to the transition over into the new ERP. So if actually there were 3.2 million in expenditures in the unallocated cost center, whereas it showed 0 in budgeted amount for that same amount. So actually we're under considerably in terms of budgeted expenditures actual to budget. And I think going forward in 2020 and beyond, we will not have that unallocated line item cost center. Is that
correct, Ken, or? Fund balance transfer. Okay, I don't want to get too technical, but bottom line is we're still collecting some grant revenues for various departments in public protection and judiciary. I spoke to the committee last Friday about this. And then also in health and human services, we're still collecting grant revenues for several of their programs. We don't close out the books until March of this year, and so we will still be booking revenues into the 2019 budget that we have not received yet. So, but preliminarily, we look good in terms of expenditures versus revenues, actual compared to budget, and we will be returning a net amount, I don't have that amount yet, to the bottom line general fund balance at the end of 2019. So overall positive preliminary year-end report. And then also we have a capital improvement project status report in your packet. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of my report, unless there are questions.
Any questions for Supervisor
Could
Schoberg?
you provide us a best estimate of the amount of revenue in excess of expenses? Is it that 3.2 million, I take it that's just an accounting enter, that's not real
Right.
cash? So the 1.4 million would be adjusted up to 1.6 or something? Is that
Yeah,
what you think?
I don't like to throw out numbers and then have it come back, but I may be safe to say approximately 2 million, Ken? Okay.
Never mind.
Safe to say it's a positive number. Supervisor Schoberg, north of 1 million. I can guarantee that.
Supervisor Peavy?
Yeah, under the KIP, under the fourth line down, grants, other governments, we budgeted 35,000, but we got 820,000. Third line down, grants, other government, 2019 budget was 35,000, but the year to date was 820,000.
Ken, do you want to help out there? Is that for the
That's
CDD, Community
no,
Development?
That's actually a highway. That's the
Highway.
shed that makes up the bulk of that.
Okay.
Bill knew that.
Supervisor Ochteroff?
Yeah, mine has to do with the KIP too, and I think I've asked this question before, but in my opinion, it's even more important since we have a high possibility of a lot of new members on this board come the election. And I would like to have the year that each KIP project was introduced on here, because I would like to know how many years a project's been on before it gets done. And, I mean, it should be pretty easy, but it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Malik?
How does it look like we came out with respect to our sales tax, expected versus real?
We're ahead of projections for the year. The last 2 months, it's about a 2-month delay. So we're still collecting the end of 2019 actual, which we'll book back into that year, so I don't have a final number on that. But we are ahead of projections from what we budgeted.
Any other questions? Not seeing any? Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
We'll get into our business items. First one is a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of a $2,422,000 general obligation promissory note series 2020A. Do I have a motion for that? Supervisor Schoberg, second. Supervisor Motatum. Thank you. Discussion on that? I'll turn it over to Supervisor Schoberg.
Well, it's a refinancing proposition that ends up saving us over $100,000, but put some more icing on the cake, would you please?
Good morning, Supervisors. Sean Lentz with Ellers. I believe everyone has the sale report, and I see it up on the screen as well. I'll just take a second to go through that. Looking back, about a month ago, I attended the meeting, and we talked about the option of refinancing 2 loans that the county has with the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. Those are called state trust fund loans. The loans are prepayable at the discretion of the county, and given the current interest rate environment, we thought it was a good idea to look at potentially refinancing those loans to save money for the county and its taxpayers. If you can go in a couple pages. What we did with this, to the summary of proposals, what we did with the refinancing of these 2 state trust fund loans is we put it out to banks that have a presence in the county and asked for them to provide us proposals by noon yesterday. And what you see on the list are the proposals that we received from the different institutions in interest rate, and we did get a couple of options for the county to consider. If you look at the quoted rate and rate with prepayment privileges, those were what was provided by the different institutions. The best interest rate bid is the second one down in the quoted rate column from U.S. Bank at 1.61%. The one caveat with their proposal is that the obligation would be non-callable, so that the county will pay it through its maturity 6 years from now. That proposal, though, was about 30 basis points lower than any other proposal that we saw, and that translates into, I think, about $22,000 in additional savings as compared to the other proposals that we see. And talking about that option with county staff, the decision was to recommend that for approval to the full county board today. And to highlight the savings, if you go a couple pages back, we have 3 exhibits at the back end of the report. Exhibit number 1 is the new issue and the payments that the county will be making in 2021 through 2026. So those are the payments coming up over that 6-year period. And Exhibit 2 and 3 then highlight the savings. So as an example on Exhibit 2, if you look at the light blue rectangle, when we compare the savings of the issues as they were before the refinancing, and that's on the left side of the page, the existing rate of 3.25%, compared to the payments that the county will be, and this is inclusive of the costs associated with doing the refinancing. You can see in that blue rectangle toward the bottom of the page that you'll pay about $118,000, almost $119,000 less in interest expense by refinancing the $3.7 million state trust fund loan from 2016. Exhibit 3, that particular loan, excuse my voice this morning, was quite a bit smaller, originally $117,000, and on this one we'll pay $3,700 less in expense through the remaining 6 years. So when you sum the 118 and the 3,700 together, you're coming up with about $122,000 less in interest expenses compared to if the county left the outstanding issues alone. The last thing I'll mention in terms of the presentation that I gave about a month ago to the county board regarding the option of doing this refinancing, I think at that time we were estimating savings in and around $70,000. So we were very happy to see aggressive bidding by the institutions in the county, and these results certainly bear that out. Action to approve the proposal today from the best bidder, that being again U.S. Bank, would be to approve a resolution prepared by the county's bond council. So
Okay,
Chairman, I'll turn it back to you if there's any questions.
okay. Any questions on this then? Everybody's, Jim.
And maybe I missed it, but why was the, when I read the amount of the two bonds on the front page, 3.7 million roughly and 118,000, or 117,000 roughly, why is the request for more than the sum of those two again?
Yeah, if everyone looks at exhibits, or well, let's go to Exhibit 1. I think that'll show it the best. And if you look at the bottom of the page on Exhibit 1, I've got it up on the screen, where it says deposit to project fund, that's the amount needed to pay off, and I'm looking at the column total. That's the amount to pay off the two existing loans. Cost of issuance, I think, is what makes up the difference. That those costs being built into the new issue are why the amount of the new loan is larger than the existing two issues, how much is outstanding.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not CNA. We'll vote at this time. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Thank you. And that's all yeses. Thank you. That passes. And we'll go to the next business item is resolution amending maintenance and board of jail inmate fee schedule. Well, I need a motion to approve that. Supervisor Osnes, do I have a second? Supervisor Fiedler. So motion and second on the floor. We'll go into explanation on it. We'll turn it over to Kathy.
Good morning. We're taking a look at our fees that we're charging some of our inmates. They're basically broken down into two categories. One category that we are taking a look and recommending changes to is our Huber electronic monitoring and folks on a day report. These folks are monitored through GPS and/or alcohol monitoring. And for the folks out on day report, those monitoring technologies are ordered by a judge. For our Huber inmates and folks out on electronic monitoring, the technology that we use is mostly left up to the sheriff, whether alcohol monitoring and GPS are both warranted or one or the other. So if you take a look at the maintenance fee schedule, I believe the sheriff handed out the fee schedule from 2016, and there was one attached in your packet for what we're proposing. You look under housing, we're asking that we actually do actual costs of our technologies that are being used. In the old fee schedule, it labeled GPS bracelets and alcohol monitoring. There are several companies that have all sorts of technologies, and we would like to take advantage of those in the future, if they're appropriate, and charge the actual costs of the technology. If we're pinned into actual verbiage and price points, we may be charging inmates more than what they need to be charged. So we're not looking to charge more or anything like that, but it's more the actual cost of the technologies that may be available to us in the future. Under medical expenses, There's no difference in a nurse or doctor visit. We're $5 and $10 respectively, and I think that's appropriate. The jail just went to a new jail medical contract. Our previous contract covered all medication costs. The current contract that we have does not cover medication costs, and that falls back onto the county. So we are looking to charge actual costs possibly back to inmates. But with that being said, our current contract also allows for people to bring in medications that they had been prescribed prior to being in jail. So there is a cost savings to that. Our previous contract did not allow for that. In addition, if someone is indigent, doesn't have the ability to pay, we are responsible for giving them a financial disclosure so that they can say, I don't have the ability to pay, and that could be waived. So it's not to essentially kick somebody when they're down. It's really to have those folks that may have the ability to pay for their medications. I know there was questions at Public Protection as to how much medications were or are on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis. In January, the total amount for prescription medications was $4,038, which is a lot of money. I can tell you that that amount is probably inflated. We had a person in jail that needed HIV medications, and his medications alone were $3,240. So about a $800 difference, or $800 for the rest of the jail. Our jail medical is doing a great job negotiating prices with the pharmacy and any outside medical testing that they need or doctor's appointments. They're also negotiating those prices with the clinic. We've also learned that for some folks, we learned this from another county on the other side of the state, Badger care is continuing for some folks while they're in jail, and that hasn't been the case. I just learned of it yesterday, so we're really taking a look at our jail admin, and our jail medical is taking a look at what they're doing in that county so that maybe we can continue Badger care for folks that are already on Badger care. I don't have an answer for that today, but it's something that we are seriously looking at. Are there any questions, concerns?
Anybody have a Super Dr. Off?
Mine, I don't know if it's specific to this, but we keep adding these costs, and I mean, obviously the person is in this situation because of something they did, but if they're paying rent, child support, and all these added costs, plus they may have lost their job, and if they get another job, it's not particularly high paying, it looks like all we're doing is a cycle. And what are we doing financially to help these people get out of the cycle? I realize we're doing a lot of other things, drug treatment, alcohol treatment, which is important and vital, but you also have that financial aspect, which is incredibly important to a lot of people. And I don't know if you're the right person to talk to about this, or this could be something that maybe the board, but to me, it's important.
Right, and I agree with that. One of the initiatives that we have in the sheriff's office, and specifically the jail this year, is to reinvent our programming. Our programming traditionally has been with our inmates while they're in jail. We haven't concentrated on reintegration. I was over in Dunn County. They had some fantastic programming over there with a really fantastic program director. I would like to model what they have. I can tell you just on a side note what they're doing for some long-term. They have to be in jail at least 2 weeks to be part of the program, but there's some specific programming that they have within the jail if they're longer term. But reintegration, they're getting folks signed up on Badger Care, and that's reinstated within 7 days of their release. They're sending inmates out with 7 to 10 days of medications so that they don't immediately fall off. And doctor's appointments, AODA, mental health appointments are all being made. I would like to get to that point. We haven't been able to do it in the last year and a half. Staffing issues in the jail, and we're getting to a point where we're above water, and I'd like to take a look at that in a much larger, more encompassing view.
It'd be nice if the county was kept abreast of what's going on. Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me so often it's the same people around and around because there's so many added things. I mean, and I'm not saying it goes down to their fault. You know, that's not correct either, but you know what, this is just, it's one thing after another, and it's like they can't get out.
And I agree. I think all of our, you know, whether it's Health and Human Services, economic support, the sheriff's office, the jail, all the police departments, we are often dealing with the same population over and over and over again. I don't think the jail is going to save everyone, but much like treatment court, there's some folks that have some great success, or at least success for a while, and that makes a huge difference and a huge impact in families and what our officers are dealing with every day.
Supervisor Motatum.
Yeah, could you tell me what parameters you're using to determine if a person has the ability to pay versus being indigent?
In Wisconsin State Statute 302.372, it goes through what the parameters are, and it's a financial disclosure, and we're responsible for giving that paperwork to them. The plan is if they leave our jail and they're now out in the community, a report would be generated. Our financial person will look at who owes money. They'll send a notice that they owe the St. Croix County Jail a set amount of money. A financial disclosure will be sent with that, and once it's returned, we'll take a look at what they've reported to us. But as far as, you know, it's not everyone is going to be sent to collections. But that's all spelled out in the statute.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kathy? Supervisor Malik.
With respect to Huber employment by jail inmates, for the last decade or so, it's been common to see prisoners walking along the side of Carmichael Road, headed in the morning south, presumably to a job somewhere on the hill of Hudson, and in the afternoon back. With the new development that's going to be happening in that former farm field area there, I suppose I should have looked at this. I don't know if there's going to be a sidewalk to make that more user-friendly or not, but I wonder if there isn't, again, as Supervisor Achterhoff puts it, these people are there because of things they've done. We all recognize that. But it's also in everyone's benefit to have Huber employment as full as it can be. And at the moment, employers in Hudson are looking for people. So what are the pros and cons of our operating some kind of a bus service or calling a cab or something else to facilitate people getting to work in the Hudson area? It's too big a topic.
It's a loaded question, and it's not one I'm prepared to answer. I can tell you that there are several bikes that have been donated. I believe it's by Norflex. They are a company outside of Hudson, near on County Road or Highway 12. A lot of our Hubers do get employment out there. We have a good relationship with that business, and they've bought and donated bicycles for Hubers to use. It's something better than walking, and those bikes are there all the time on a bike rack. So obviously in western Wisconsin, transportation is an issue. A lot of the folks do get rides. Some Some of our folks are multiple OWI offenders, and they don't have any ability to drive in the future. If they were convicted in this year and in the future, they forever lose their license. So it is an issue, but I don't think we've ever dove into actually having a bus service or taxi service as part of the jail.
Mr. Chairman, when we get to the future topics, help me remember, please, that I'd like to ask the Public Protection Committee to follow up on this as well as that mental health treatment in the jail issue that I've raised before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With some time, maybe you can give us all assurance that that we're doing the best we can. That's, I think, all we can expect.
When we get a little bit further along in the reintegration with programming, I am sure there'll be a presentation made to the board about some of the good things that we're doing down there. I've met with Fred Johnson, Steve Kurt, Kristen Dupre, Kelly Ingen from Public Health a couple weeks ago, and they are very much interested in partnering and doing that soft handoff for our folks, and so I think some good things are happening there as well.
Thank you, Kathy. We have a motion and a second on the floor, so at this time we'll vote.
Mr. Wheeler, your second, please. No, it's Bob.
There. What? I didn't confirm. And that's all yeses, so that passes too. Thank you so much. That concludes our business items. Now we have requests for future agenda items, and I'll take your request, Linda.
I'd like to request that the Public Protection Committee follow up on the program to promote Huber employment, including the transportation aspect of it, with a particular view to folks who need to transit Carmichael Road in order to get to the Hudson Hill area jobs, and then report back to the county board. Probably not, I won't be here, but when the time comes. And then also to continue to follow up and eventually report to the county board on what's being done with respect to mental health of jail inmates. Probably now our plans can be a little different with the new rooms that we will have and starting in the fall, and so it's a good time to be talking about those topics and trying to do the best we can to minimize recidivism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Supervisor Akhtarov?
Yeah, I don't know how it would be due, but I would like to see something about housing in St. Croix County brought up. Because, I mean, we have people that are that have substance abuse problems and all sorts of things, and also people that are trying to live in St. Croix County, the whole gamut of what is available for low-income, newcomers, families, and whatnot, because I have no idea exactly what situation St. Croix County is in, except that it's not doing particularly well, just like the rest of the country, for low income. I don't know if that would be for the board or just Health and Human Services.
Okay. Supervisor Ard.
Mr. Chairman and County Supervisors, I am the housing navigator for the Salvation Army for a 7-county region in western Wisconsin. Currently, low-income and very low-income housing, senior housing, housing for the disabled, or housing for persons who have recently been released from incarceration or have a drug conviction is minimal. And if you do have a drug conviction, you will not be entering any public housing under a public housing authority or any federally funded project-based HUD housing, which may be privately owned, because a drug conviction, especially methamphetamine, prohibits you from doing so. Domestic violence also prohibits you from obtaining housing. I deal with hundreds of cases a week of persons seeking housing, and I can tell you that we are not sitting well. The price point for an average 3-bedroom apartment is currently $1,700, not including utilities. 1-bedrooms cannot even be obtained. The beginning price on a 1-bedroom is $750 plus utilities. If you can find a private property owner, it's rare. There's also such a thing as habitability within properties. We do not have any type of permitting or licensure within the county or within any communities currently. So many of the properties that you will see advertised in the social media are not fit for habitation. They would never pass even a minimalist HQS inspection. It is a topic that we should be looking at, and we should be joining with the communities of St. Croix County to make St. Croix County one of the best housing areas for everyone, not just those who can afford $1,700 a month or $300,000 for a home. We're in a significant situation right now where we have more elderly, more veterans, and more persons with families who cannot find suitable housing.
Any other agenda items? Supervisor Schoberg.
It's water. So last night, my wife and I went up to St. Croix Falls Library and attended the movie Freedom to Harm, and it's a documentary, and a lot of the photo shoots are in Wisconsin, Kewaunee County, and there were about 100 people there, mostly because of the threatened 22,000 hog farm that might go into Burnett County, kind of at the headwaters of Namakogon and that flows into our St. Croix River. So more needs to be done, and there are some success stories now where some counties are finding a way to enact an ordinance based upon air quality, not so much on siting. That's a kind of a lost cause presently because of the state's decision to not let counties have local control over those issues. So remember when we had a moratorium vote, and I voted against the moratorium. I regret that now. But I voted against it because I thought, well, let's study it first, and there were enough reasonable people representing the smaller CAFOs that I wanted to have them have an opportunity to inform us about what the issues are. So we listened to that. We conducted for 9 months a long-term study. We came up with some priorities, and it takes some funding to address those priorities. But I think some of the things we still can do is to now be knowledgeable about what some of the other counties are doing that have some successes. Up in Washburn County, Bayfield County, they have been able to stop a large hog farm from coming in right adjacent to Lake Superior. And it was all because of the efforts of the grassroots local people there. And these large industrial farms which come in, they're not just 1,000 units anymore. Now we're looking at 5, 6, 7,000 with millions and millions of gallons of waste, more than anybody all throughout the city of Hudson, more waste than that. So we need to be able to respond to that. So I just hope that the board continues to request that community development actively represent the interests of the small farms, the people that live adjacent to these industrial farms, so that they can have a healthy place to live and not have their property values ruined. So it's for their benefit, but also for the benefit of our wild and scenic river, which if that's lost due to pollution, it will really reduce the tourism value here. So let's just stay with it and keep on focus on that. So I would like to see periodic reports made from community development. It might be once a quarter, maybe once every 2 months, but how are we doing? An active report. So that's my request. Thank you.
This isn't another request, but this is an addition because I know that St. Croix County is trying to get a water-based sample. They're doing samples. They divided the county into grids. They want to get one representative from each grid area. In my district, there were a lot of grid areas that were empty. I've been to Emerald. I've been to Glenwood. Tonight will be Forest, where I'm getting at least 3 names of people from the supervisors that live in the grid areas that are not represented, to see if I can get them entered in. And it might behoove you to check with Cole, see if there's any grid areas in your districts so you can help them fill it out so that there is a good baseline for St. Croix County.
At this time, this is for agenda items, so kind of hold it off for just agenda items. Further art.
I would like to see this body entertain on the next agenda the proposal of elections for this board and going to alternate years for elections so that the board is not completely overturned with a loss of knowledge and experience.
Any other agenda items?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a future agenda item per se, but I was going to comment on some of the comments
just
for
keep it to
future
agenda
agenda
items
items.
right
Will
now.
we have an opportunity to do that?
I'd like to keep it just, we got carried away here, but I'd like to get just back to agenda items without comments in here.
Will we have an opportunity to, though?
Well, this is for agenda items only. If you have an agenda item, we'll take your, okay?
I think Mr. Cox is reaching for his microphone because the open meeting law is kind of a framework on this, and probably Mr. Schoberg talked longer than he should about substance, substantive matters rather than just scheduling things.
Correct.
So, change my opinion? No. Nope. So, thank you though, Bob. We'll move on if there's no other agenda items from the floor. County Clerk's report. Nothing there. Announcements. Anybody have any announcements? Go ahead.
The facilities director, Jim Ellsbury, asked me to announce to the board that parked out in front is one of our first electric vehicles, EV1, that we're going to be slowly but surely integrating electric vehicles into our county fleet. It's parked out in front. If you want to see it, look at it. I think he even offered if you want to take them for a little ride. So anyway, it's out in front. Take a look at it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I have an announcement. It concerns Earth Day. We happen to live not far from the home of the father of Earth Day. That was our own Governor Gaylord Nelson, who grew up in Clear Lake, Wisconsin, at the headwaters of the Willow River. This year, April 22, that's Earth Day itself. It falls on a Wednesday. And because of it being the 50th anniversary, believe it or not, and there are a few of us old enough to have some memories of that first year, it'll be big in this region, in this area, in terms of celebrations. So for your future calendars, you might think about participating in a river walk on the weekend of April 18 and 19, Saturday and Sunday, prior to Earth Day, from the headwaters at Clear Lake all the way down to the place where the Willow joins the St. Croix on Sunday afternoon. That's a 44-mile walk by streets. It's not going to be along the bank, so don't worry too much about that. And you can just do a piece of it, which is what I'm going to do, not the whole thing, that weekend. And then on the weekend after that, As usual, we're having our St. Croix County Earth Day celebration on Saturday afternoon. That date would be April 25th. Obviously, you're all welcome. Nonprofit groups are welcome to exhibit down at Lakefront Park in Hudson, in St. Croix County. And then there's also a kind of a choir performance, sing-along, famous musician named Dan Schauenard on Sunday afternoon, the 26th, at the Phipps. And I think they're open already for reservations for tickets for that on the 26th. So from the 18th through the 26th in this region, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just in 10 seconds, and not just to test your patience just a bit, I was only going to make an informational comment on 4 of the topics that were raised that might have helped the board understand some of the things we were doing that other entities of our board government were doing that might have been of interest to the group. But we don't have anything on our agenda that permits that to happen. So perhaps we should, within the guidelines that Mr. Cox would suggest, we should have the ability to share information with our fellow board members on items they brought to our attention. I specifically would have raised issues with regard to mental health and housing and water, but our program doesn't permit that.
Any other announcements? Mr. Joberg.
I'll be absent March, so I just want to announce this is my last board meeting. It's been a privilege and an honor to represent the District 5 in Hudson. I call it the Rainbow District, where even my liberal values are excused. So, and for the rest of you, hopefully I've never been too offensive when we've disagreed, because I thought this is always a respectful body, and it was an honor to serve. Thanks.
Thank you for that. No other announcements? We're done. We're adjourned. Thank you so much.